All right, it's a live episode of Locked On Pelicans. More injury news for the Pels. What does it mean for the start of the regular season? Plus, does it make any sense to bring Jrue Holiday back to Nola? It's a live episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at Nola Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Thursday, a live show. We do these every 7 p.m. Central on Thursdays. These have been fun. It's my way to interact with y'all, so put your questions in the chat. We'll really start to get to those in this episode, and we got a lot to talk about. Injury news, trade targets, what do those Bucks picks mean? What are they worth now? We'll cover it all and your question in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday for y'all, breaking down everything you want to know about this Pelicans team, the number one Pelicans podcast. Media Days on Monday. So make sure you become an everydayer because news is going to come fast and quick. We're going to have a lot of really great media day coverage. I'm going to actually be set up doing the show live and talking with players at media day. So this is going to be really cool. So make sure you are an everydayer and you don't miss anything that comes out after media day and what we get at the start of the year. Training camp's Tuesday. Everything's going to be fast. You get a preseason game before we know it. There's the open practice next Saturday or Sunday. I forget which day. It's going to be a lot of fun. So please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Comment down below on YouTube and tell a friend about the show. The season's starting. Get them clued in to what's going on here in New Orleans. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. Nola Star Bar says everydayer. Sky Neal is an everydayer. We see it here. Nola G is an everydatter here. That works with me, no problem. I dig that as well. Jerry Madison, funny last name there, is another everydayer. Mick Vanderfrago, everydayer as well. So we got a bunch of y'all here with me for the live show. And again, we do these every Thursday at 7 p.m. Central. So let's get into the big news before we get into your questions and everything. The Pelicans sent out a press release giving us medical updates on Jose Alvarado and Larry Nance Jr. It says Jose Alvarado sustained a right ankle sprain during an off-season workout. He's expected to return to basketball activities in approximately 2 to 3 weeks. Okay. Larry Nance Jr. received a biologic injection to stimulate the healing process in his left ankle. He's expected to make a full recovery before the start of the regular season and is anticipated to return to basketball activities in approximately 2 to 3 weeks. So both these guys are out 2 to 3 weeks. It's not the end of the world. They're not going to really be available for training camp or for even some of the preseason games. 2 to 3 weeks puts them, say, the 5th is a week, 12th, the 19th. So really by the start of the regular season. So they're likely going to miss most of the preseason games. Maybe they play in the final one on the 17th if things are going well. But you won't see them Tuesday against the Magic. You won't see them against the Rockets on the 12th, the Atlanta Hawks on the 14th, or on the road at the Magic in the final preseason game. It's a little bit disappointing, but the good news is they should be ready for the start of the regular season. That's the big thing. Both those guys are 2 of your 3 main guys coming off of the bench, including Trey Murphy. If you think about it, they're missing maybe 3 of their 4 most important guys off the bench here. That's a very big deal. But they're going to be ready for the start of the regular season. So I'm less worried about these guys. And look, just get a little bit of run in, and I think everything's going to be fine. What I do like about this, though, is it's going to really open the door for some of the backups, some of the younger guys to get key minutes in preseason. They're going to have to play significant roles and really step up here. I think that's a wonderful thing. This is going to give minutes to a guy like Jordan Hawkins who might not be getting them. You're a rookie on a team that's competing for the postseason that wants to be in the playoffs. Are you going to be given that opportunity to shine? Not necessarily, right? This is kind of a make or break year, as I've said. This is a bit of a prove it year, I think. Would Willie Green trust a rookie? Probably not. But does this mean he's going to get some minutes to showcase what he can do in preseason? Absolutely. What about Kira Lewis Jr.? We're unsure of what they have in him. We don't know what this team is thinking long term with him. This is an opportunity for him to try and claim a little bit of a role. This is also their chance to experiment with a guy like Cody Zeller, EJ Liddell. Zeller, you know what you're going to get, but what lineups work best with him? Well, you're going to need to rely on him a little bit more now than you would have otherwise. And for EJ Liddell, who's very much more of a 4 than a 5 and kind of a small ball 5 at times, more of a 4 than a 3 and maybe could play small ball 5, a la Larry Nance Jr., well, here's his opportunity to get these minutes, I think. And that's what I really like. Instead of trying to shake off some of the rust with your veteran guys, which would be a good thing, don't get me wrong, you're going to trust some of these younger guys, give them big roles and see. And if they deliver, that opens your options up significantly more for the start of the regular season. Dyson Daniels, Benoit Robinson says, really wanting to see what Dyson can do. He's going to, he was already in the rotation, but I do think now he's going to have more of an opportunity in preseason to really go out there and showcase what they can do. So this is big. If any of those guys sees any of these opportunities, and I think they can do so, it makes your training camp and the start of the regular season just more, competitive, right? Competition for spots is a wonderful thing that can bring out the best in some of these guys. When someone's pushing you because they want to take your minutes, your role, I like that sort of thing. So I'm excited not excited for injuries, right? But excited for these other guys to get opportunities they wouldn't normally get. And hopefully their offseason preparation is going to have them ready for that. You've got to kind of be ready, right? When it's next man up, when you have, your number being called, and it's going to at some point, especially with the Pelicans team that is always dealing with injuries, it's going to be a lot of fun, I think, this year to watch some of these guys get these minutes. I'm more excited for preseason now than I would have been otherwise because I want to watch Jordan Hawkins play. I want to see what they have in Kira Lewis Jr. Y'all know I was incredibly high on EJ Liddell, 19th or 20th on my draft board that year, and they got him in the second round, didn't play last year, and I am very excited for everything. So I don't know. I want to see all of these young players play and get out there. And I like that this gives them the opportunity to, because look, there's one thing we've seen with Willie Green is definitely a bit of an issue. And that's he relies on his guys and doesn't necessarily go for some of the younger players always. Herb Jones got minutes his rookie year, but Trey didn't probably get some of the minutes that he should have had. And so all of that I do think is, maybe this just forces his hand to do some of the things that we need to see him do. So I'm excited for preseason. I'm excited for these guys to really try and step up. They're going to need more shooting. If EJ Liddell goes out and plays well in preseason, you're going to have to find minutes for him. And I think that's a good thing. So I'm excited. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Who are kind of the next men up? Who's replacing Larry Nance Jr.? Who's replacing Jose Alvarado? Who do you want to see replace those guys in preseason, in training camp, get some run? Let me know in the comments down below. All right, we're seeing some of the questions come through here. One of them is around Jrue Holiday. Let's talk about that coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Before we get to that, though, today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by DoorDash. You've trusted DoorDash to deliver your restaurant favorites, and now you can get grocery delivery that actually delivers too. And with thousands of grocery stores to choose from, you'll find the best in your neighborhood and boost your local economy with each and every order. And you're going to get exactly what you ordered, or they're going to make it right. So sit back and enjoy quality groceries just like you picked them yourselves. If you prefer Rouse's, Robert's, Canseco's, they're all on DoorDash. You need one or two things while you're cooking, but you don't have time to go run to the store. Get your phone out, open up the DoorDash app, let them take care of it for you. And if you want even more value, you can save on all your grocery and restaurant favorites with a $0 delivery fee on all eligible orders with a Dash Pass membership. And with easy substitutions right in the app and best-in-class customer support, you're going to get your groceries exactly how you want it. So get 50% off your first DoorDash order up to a $20 value when you use code LOCKEDONNBA at checkout. There's a limited time offer, terms apply. That's 50% 50% off up to $20. No minimum subtotal, no delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter code LOCKEDONNBA. Don't forget, that's code LOCKEDONNBA for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, breaking down everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. I'm going to have a lot for you on Media Day. The Pelicans are actually giving me more access than they've ever had before. Shout out to them. I appreciate them doing all of that. If you saw, I tweeted out a picture of my mobile setup. We're going to take the show on the road here. The plan after games this season, home games, is to record the podcast live stream it kind of like we're doing here and just do it from the arena and get the show out to you immediately. So I'm really excited for this season. So subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube and become an everydayer so you don't miss an episode, because we are going to have a lot of content here that you don't get anywhere else. And if you want to become a Locked On Pelicans insider, where you can message me directly, chat with me, because I just don't use social media as much and this is what I prefer, join the Locked On Pelicans Insiders group on Subtext. I will put the link in the chat here for y'all so that you can see it, and then you'll be able to message me. It does cost $4.99 a month, but there's a 14-day free trial. Definitely give it a shot before Media Day, because you're going to want to see what I'm going to be sending out and everything like that. But also, if you don't like it, that's okay. The show is still going to be free and 5 days a week for y'all. So we're still going to be here with everything. So, okay, let's get into your questions, which, yeah, I know what y'all want. It's going to center around Jrue Holiday here, and I think that's what I'm seeing quite possibly. So let me go through the chat here. Silver Wolf says, I'm late, but I'm here. Let's go. Love it. Robert Mason asks, how do the recent trades? We'll get into the questions in a little bit, but I want to get into where we talk about Jrue Holiday here. Edgardo Cruz Pagan says, I'm not sure if I prefer getting Jrue or trying to grab Buddy Hield. That's a great place to start. Last week we talked about Buddy Hield, and I just don't think it makes a ton of sense to go after Buddy Hield at $20 million. He's one-dimensional. The shooting's good, but what role does he truly have on this team? Whose role is he taking? And for an $18 million expiring deal, he might be expensive, might not be, but I don't know. I just don't see a fit in terms of that, and also trying to find a deal that works when you have to have salaries match in NBA trades isn't all of that easy. Jrue Holiday is a bit of a different story. Jrue Holiday is well-rounded. He's a beloved player too. I do think that is kind of an important thing. And his salary kind of works a little bit because, did they already take him off on Basketball Reference? They might have, and put him on somewhere else, but that's kind of funny to me. But his salary kind of works really well with CJ McCollum's. And so you can kind of create a trade where you send out CJ, bring Jrue Holiday back, and it makes a lot of sense. Jrue Holiday this year is making $36.8 million. He has a player option for $39.4 next season, which he will almost certainly pick up, I would imagine, unless he thinks he can get a longer-term deal than that. But you could, in theory, bring Jrue Holiday back, send out CJ McCollum. It would probably be CJ in something like 3 or 4 picks, I think. But you have the ability to do this. I think on the surface, just the surface of it, that Jrue Holiday makes sense for the Pelicans. And you can do some interesting things if you send, and let's keep this really simple here. Let's send out CJ, bring in Jrue Holiday, which I don't think the Pelicans front office would actually do. And I also don't think, to be perfectly honest with y'all, that Portland, who sent out CJ, wants to bring CJ back. This is all just a little bit awkward. I was just on WDSU taping something with them, which will be 10:30 Sunday. It's 10:30 Central PM on Channel 6, WDSU with Fletcher Mackel. And we talked about this. The Pelicans called about Damian Lillard, but you would almost have to send out CJ, and that's probably just going to be a no-go for the Portland Trailblazers. So I don't think Jrue Holiday deal, bringing him back to New Orleans, is actually going to happen. But I'm intrigued by this idea. One of the things we wanted to know is who would start, Herb Jones or Trey Murphy? You need Trey's shooting, right? But you also need Herb Jones and his defense. Well, what if you send out CJ, bring back Jrue Holiday, and your starting lineup is Jrue Holiday, Brandon Ingram, Now you put in Trey Murphy for Herb Jones and have Herb come off the bench, Zion and Jonas Valanciunas. So you still get defense with Jrue Holiday, some three-point shooting too, which is better than Herb Jones, and some playmaking too. You get the shooting then from Trey Murphy as well. Does that kind of maximize your starting lineup? And then you can have Herb come in for Jrue or Trey, however you want to use them. I'm intrigued by that idea, to be perfectly honest. I would much more consider this trade if that's kind of the general plan here. But if you put Jrue and Herb out there, I think you're definitely lacking some offense, and that's going to be a little bit of a problem. I've seen some other things mentioned, and I don't really know if any of that makes sense. Doug Rosenthal says, hello from Disney World. The Tron Lightsicles kicked my butt. How would you feel about shipping out Dyson in exchange for Jrue? Salaries have to match. So if Drew's making $36 million, you need to get closer to that. So it can't just be Dyson for Jrue. And you're also going to need to probably include a pick with that. I don't know if I want to send out Dyson, call it salary filler, whatever it is, and a pick for Jrue Holiday, who, has struggled in the postseason for the Bucks since they won that title, has talked a little bit about retirement and maybe starting to kind of wind down his career some. He's 33 this year, he'll be 34. So it makes sense, but I don't think you need to go too hard in this. Nola Star Bar says, I saw a 3-team trade proposal where the Pels essentially traded JV for Robert Williams. I don't think that makes any sense. Why would the Celtics do that? So you would be doing a 3-team deal where Jrue Holiday comes to where? You'd have to tell me what that trade is. I'm curious about that. But if Jonas Valanciunas is going to the Celtics, they don't probably want to have both Al Horford and Jonas Valanciunas. I think that's a little bit too much there. On everything. Josh Darby says, I love Jrue, but that ship has sailed just like Buddy. Yeah, I think it's probably that. I just don't see where it makes sense. And one of the things the Pelicans don't have, which is kind of rough, is a lot of mid-tier salary. Guys in that like $15 million and up range. You kind of have Larry Nance Jr. and Jonas Valanciunas, and that's about it. You would need something like that to really help facilitate a deal like this. And they're kind of top heavy. Then they have those like 2 middle guys on kind of like the low end of the middle tier, and then a bunch of cheaper guys on rookie deals and stuff. So it's a bit of a problem to look at some of the trades and picks because, I don't know if it makes sense, right? Kevin Byers says, love Jrue, but I vote no. Like, I get it. Craig says we'd have to move some young guys to take on Drew's salary, but should be able to get him for those Bucks picks. Sure, Jrue Holiday's gettable. If New Orleans wants him, they can do that, but I just don't think that's going to end up being the way to go. Steven Sanders Jr. says, not bringing Jrue back, but I'd go for Cat and Nah reunion for the right package. I'm not a big Karl Anthony Towns fan for Minnesota, so I don't know if I would end up doing something like that. I've seen a couple comments here about the open practice. Elena G says open practice and home opener squad. Let's go. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to see everyone there. So I hope everybody ends up going. I saw someone asking if I'm going to be at the open practice. Yes, I would. I will be there. I might just do a show live from there and maybe get some of y'all on the show too. So I'm going to see if they can set me up with a station or something along those lines, which is going to be a lot of fun. Odwin Green says, where are the everyday watchers? I love it. Everydayers. Chris Murray says, bring in Ben Simmons. Hold on. I think I like the idea of Ben Simmons in theory, but I probably wouldn't really go with that because it's just not going to work. So, yeah, I don't know. Odwin Green also says, well, we'll get into that in the next segment. So one thing with the Bucks picks that I think we should look at here is I still don't think they're terrible. The one, this coming year is not going to be great, certainly, but I do think they are still in a pretty good position with that one in, let me see, I got to pull up the Pelicans' future draft picks, even though I just did a show on this and I can't remember off the top of my head, but let me take a quick look here. So they have a swap option with the Bucks this year, which is not going to happen. They should have an unprotected Bucks pick in 2025. That one's going to be garbage. The one still in 2027, I think, remains a possibility that it could be somewhat decent. If they flame out in the next year or two in 2024 and 2025, Giannis still might not re-sign or still want out. And if they're going to be in the second apron, which is a team building thing that I've talked about on the show, there's potential that they're still not going to be able to add to that team at all. And Giannis gets a little bit fed up and wants out. I don't think the picks before that from them are going to do any good, but that 2027 one is at least worth keeping an eye on for now. I would say it doesn't look great. The swaps were probably never going to happen in the first place, so I never factored those in. But I do think that one of 2027 could still have value. The one in 2025, no, is going to be, it'll be a first round pick, but it's not going to be good because the Bucks are still going to be good then. They'll still have Giannis and Lillard. But let's see after that fact. If Lillard ages pretty quickly, poorly, that's not going to be a good thing at all with it. So I do think those picks could still end up having some value, or at least one of those picks could end up having some value for the New Orleans Pelicans here. So let's get into your questions. I see a couple coming through here, and that's going to be exciting. So let's look at those coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, breaking down everything you want to know about this team. Join the Locked On Pelicans Insiders group on Subtext. The link, I just put it in the chat earlier. I'll put it in right before we end the show. I don't want to spam y'all with it too much. Give it a shot, especially for Media Day. I'm going to have a table set up. They're supposedly going to bring players by me. We're going to be able to talk to them, interview them. There are going to be some things that maybe don't make it to air that I can talk about in there. I can maybe share some jersey information and things like that because I've seen the City Edition jerseys too. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to kind of chat a little bit more freely with y'all than I have been in the past on certain things. So give that a shot. If you don't like it, it's okay. You don't need to subscribe to it. You don't need to pay. The show's still going to be here free 5 days a week for y'all because we are Locked On Pelicans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This is also going to be my 8th season doing the show, which is pretty incredible. So I appreciate y'all making Locked On Pelicans and myself part of your day, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So, yeah. All right, so let's get into your questions here. I got to scroll back up. If you have questions, put them in the chat. The one thing I ask is just don't spam your question over and over again. I will get to it if I can. Maybe I just don't want to answer it for whatever reason. Just don't spam the chat. Otherwise, I have to just ban you. It's easier to do that than try and delete everything. So please don't make me do that. Silver Wolf says, do you think Zion and BI will get any preseason minutes? Will make me feel a little bit better if they can get some run. Yeah, I think they would. I think they're going to get some. I don't think they're going to get significant ones. And if it looks like they picked up an injury or something, then that is going to get shot down pretty quickly. But I think they'll get some. I think they need to get some reps and things like that, particularly Zion, who's been working out a lot at the facility and doing other things, but I don't believe he's been doing tons of scrimmages, getting in 5-on-5 runs, regularly or anything like that. Trappa BG says, let's talk Zion. What do you want to talk about Zion? He is doing all of the right things. This is, in theory, the year that we're going to get the proper version of Zion. The Zion where the epiphany has happened, the light bulb went off, right? Where he is taking care of his body a little bit better, where he's maybe taking advice from the right people. Got something in my throat there. I think I don't want to say he's retooled his camp or things like that, but I think he is paying a little bit more attention to who maybe has his best interests or not with all of that. So I think he's maybe on the right path. The question is not whether he'll be ready for the start of the season, because he will be. He's going to look good to start the season too. He's an amazing basketball player. It's when an injury happens, then what? And that's going to be a little bit of the problem. But if he's finally on track and the Pelicans have retooled their player performance and care team has been reported, then I think there's going to be more buy-in from him there. And I think it's going to lead to better results, but at least they're trying to do something now. All right, Odwin Green says, don't you think it's time to use all those picks? Yeah, you definitely want to. I went over their trade assets on the show the other day, and I think they're in a prime position in terms of first-round picks to go and get something. They're competitive with some of the top teams out there. They lack the second-round picks to really get a deal done. But, yeah, they should do something to upgrade a position. Ideally, it's the center position, I think. I think if you could go and trade, Jonas Valanciunas and a couple of picks for Jared Allen, I would do that in a heartbeat and cash some of those in just to make your roster better and go for it. Chris Murray says we need a new arena. They need to do something. I don't think the Smoothie King Center is as bad as some people claim, but yeah, they need to upgrade things for sure. Silverwolf says the Jrue situation is like Buddy last week. Every team wants him, so what we have just won't cut it. I mean, no, they can use enough. The Blazers are going to want picks. They have picks they can give. I think that's a big thing, but does he want to come back? Does he want to go to a more competitive team? I think that's kind of important too. Edgardo Cruz-Pagan says, have conversations with the Raptors just gone cold? Like, what happened to looking at OG Anunoby or Gary Trent? I don't think there have been active conversations about that. I think Anunoby makes sense for a number of different teams. I don't love him as a player, and I wouldn't give up too much for him. Gary Trent Jr. off the bench makes a lot of sense. But again, is that the type of player that it's worth trading a pick or two for? And I'm not entirely sure about that. And the Pelicans still, if you want to go after a guy like, say, Joel Embiid, who could come up on the trade market or something like that, is it better to save those picks and make a run at someone like that? I think it might be over like a minor upgrade like Gary Trent Jr. And I think that's something that the Pelicans are thinking about here. Brandon Thibodeau says 3-team with Harden going to Portland with picks for a buyout, CJ going to Philly, and Jrue coming back to Nola. If Harden's going to Portland with picks, which would probably have to come from New Orleans in this situation, I don't think Philly wants to replace Harden with CJ McCollum. I think they want to do better than that. Nola Starbar says it was Jrue to the Celtics, Brogdon and Jonas Valanciunas to the Trailblazers, and the Pelicans get Williams. They don't need Valanciunas, though, when they just got Ayton. So that's kind of the problem with that. I don't think that makes really any sense here. Silverwolf says 2027 could be good. Teams change dramatically. Saw a graphic that showed the only player from the Suns 2021 finals team still on the roster was Devin Booker. Exactly. That's like a big thing. That's, things could change with all of that. EC says, what are you looking forward to hearing about during media day? I think we want to hear from David Griffin, talk a little bit more about the changes behind the scenes, the coaching staff, all of that. I'd like to hear more from Willie Green about James Borrego and what type of offense that he's going to be doing. What's he looking to bring in? Those things I find, really important here on the impact and the future of this team, because I do think that the team could be really good. And I talked about this in yesterday's show. Today's show, technically. Give a listen to that one if you haven't. It's why I think the Pelicans are better than people realize. One more made three-pointer per game bumps their offense into the top 5, or 3 more points per game bumps their offense into the top 5. Number 2, actually, in terms of offensive rating last year. So if you change the shot selection, if you run better after timeout plays, which Borrego is known for doing, there's ways to find that, and it kind of just supercharges the offense a little bit. And I think that's something that's going to be really important for this team. It's an offensive-driven league right now. The NBA is about scoring and all of that. So if they can find a way to kind of supercharge the offense, I do think there is potential for them to be really good. So when everyone's saying they're running back, they're not making a move, what are we doing? We're just sitting on our hands. Griff is sitting on our hands. He's not. Retooling that player performance and care staff team, whatever you want to call it, the medical staff, right, is a really big deal. Zion didn't get along with them. I don't think Brandon Ingram particularly got along with them either. For whatever reason, right? Whether they're correct in that or incorrect in that, it doesn't matter. You have to get your players to buy into what you're doing. If they don't do that, you need to change things so that they do. Team finally did that. There's a significant change, in my opinion. Revamping the coaching staff a little bit is important. Willie Green didn't get to pick his people. Now he finally has, and has more of a say in that. And they'll kind of announce some more changes that are coming as we get closer towards media day with everything. That's an important thing. Willie Green is a good coach, I think, but we've seen some room for him to grow, let's say. Well, if he has the right people on his staff that he trusts, maybe they can talk to him in a way that others weren't able to do, which is going to help him grow. Maybe he's bringing in people that he knows he can learn from. And he said he's still a work in progress too. And coaches, just like players, also improve over time. And it's not always linear, as Antonio Daniels says. So I think a lot of the changes they're making are really significant this year. That kind of speaks to what Kevin Byers says of who is taking Teaspoon's role. Tell me what Teaspoon's role was. right? Like, that's some of the things of why they're looking to really change things. So I want to hear more about those changes and things like that. EC says, what are you hearing about in terms of Jordan Hawkins? Like, dude can shoot. Dude's a hard worker. He's been in the gym. He's putting in like the extra hours and things like that. The shot looks good. He's a competitor. He's got a high motor. He works really well off ball. That's going to be the type of thing that I do feel works well in the offense that they're going to try and run. And that's something that we talked about in yesterday's show as well. So keep your questions coming. We got some more time here. There's no huge rush on everything. So we can answer your questions here and do some deeper dives on things. So, of course, we are the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, the #1 Pelicans podcast. So subscribe and maybe consider joining the Locked On Pelicans Insiders group. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to be able to interact with y'all when rumors really start get going during the season. That's where I'm going to kind of share all of that. Hakeem Batiste says, what do you think it would cost us to get DeAndre Ayton? Probably not happening. He just went to Portland in that deal and in the Damian Lillard trade. And they're very high on DeAndre Ayton. So I don't think that's a player that's going anywhere. I think he would make sense for New Orleans, but his contract's pretty high at $30-something million. That's not something I think that the Pelicans could really swallow right now unless, again, you lose CJ. You just can't add another one of those players to the roster currently with the way it's done. And even finding a trade to do that while keeping BI, Zion, and CJ is particularly tough. You would probably have to send out for like Ayton, Valanciunas, Nance, and like something else. And even then, that's not like an appealing offer for the Phoenix Suns, who kind of view him as a cornerstone with their, wing in Shaedon Sharpe and now their new point guard in Scoot Henderson. So I don't think there's really a chance of DeAndre Ayton. Nola G says, Jake, will the starting five be the same starting five to finish the season? I need to ask you a follow-up question on that. Is everyone healthy in this scenario? Is everyone healthy in this scenario? If everyone's healthy, yeah, I think the starting five to start the year is going to be the one that finishes it, unless Willie Green kind of like grows and sees they need Trey Murphy to be there. But I think he likes starting Herb Jones. I don't think he wants to make that sort of change. So yeah, I think in theory, assuming everyone's healthy, the starting five at the beginning of the season is going to be the starting five at the end of the season here. Marcus Smith says 5 stars. I appreciate you. Josh Darby says the Pelicans need to find their confidence again. Yeah, I think you got to get on a good run. That's why the beginning of the season is pretty important, I think. They really need to get off to a hot start and kind of build some momentum. Losing a guy like Trey is going to hurt that. And I think that's something that worries me. But I think they're also going to be good enough without that to kind of get where they need to go. Look, Trey wasn't playing a huge role until the Zion injury and later in the season, right? And they had the 6th best offense. As long as Zion is playing, even without Brandon Ingram, this team is really good. It all hinges on Zion Williamson. As simple as that. Matt Harrison asks, who would you choose to upgrade the center position? Wendell Carter Jr., Miles Turner. I actually don't like Allen that much. I like Allen a lot. That is a dude that can get you points without really needing the ball in his hands, just as a lob threat. Miles Turner, I like enough. I've grown on him over the past 2 years. Shoots a 3-ball relatively well, though I don't think he has court gravity to draw defenders out, but he'll make you pay if you leave him open. But he's not a really good rebounder at all. Allen is. That's why I like him. I think the numbers for Miles Turner in terms of rebounding are below average, so I'm not a big fan of that. I think rebounding is something they need to try and do, particularly defensive rebounding in clutch situations. Allen's going to be able to give you that. He's mobile enough to defend on the perimeter too. I think he fits a huge need for the team. I also think Miles Turner's rim protection is a little bit overrated. He's a good shot blocker, don't get me wrong. But I'm a big believer on you need to block those shots to teammates and not just swat them out of bounds where your opponent retains possession. Anthony Davis is particularly good at that, kind of like swatting them to his teammates or just like cradling the ball himself and starting a fast break. So Turner's fine. Like if that's who they wanted to go and get and who they could get, I'd be all for it. But I do think Jared Allen is like the dream center option in my position. Benoit Robinson says, at this point, I'm happy with the team we have. Let's see what Zion can do. I'm happy with the team they have too. Certainly there's options to upgrade it. There's places they could improve. The injuries aren't great to start the year. But this team, as Silverwolf says, we were first in the West when BI was injured and Zion was balling. Yep. Like, that's a really big deal. I think that's an important thing. So worth keeping that in mind too, that this team could be good. And they're not just running it back because of all of the other changes that you don't really see in terms of players, are going to impact everything too. The changes they made are very, very significant. So I think that is an important thing. Josh Darby asks, out of our roster, who would you rather have be our main ball handler? There's not one, right? They're running point guard by committee in a sense. Zion needs to touch the ball a lot. Point Zion is very much a thing. The way I look at it is this. If you have a roster and you're trying to have one ball handler, so like 100% your ball handler, think like a Chris Paul kind of point guard, those sorts of things, right? 100%. Okay, Zion's 50. BI is 50. CJ is like 40. Herb's like 25%. It all adds up to 100%. And that's the important thing there when it comes to all of it. So they have enough people. I don't think they need someone to be their primary ball handler. Give it to Zion at times. Give it to BI at times. Those are the two guys, though, that should be handling the ball more so than anyone else. And I would like CJ McCollum to work off ball a little bit more just because the dribble drive game isn't his strong suit. Let him work off ball, kind of manufacture open threes, things like that. He shot the ball pretty well last season, 39%. Let's get more of that and just kind of make life easier on him. EC says, what is your take on former players joining the staff like Rondo or JJ Redick? Like, sure, if they want to bring those guys in, they have a number of former players, in developmental roles and things like that with the G League or as player development guys. So, yeah, I think playing experience and kind of being able to relate to NBA players at that level is actually like a fairly important thing. I think it's why you're seeing a guy like Willie Green have a lot of success and some other players out there. So I am all for all that, right? Corey Brewer, Bino Udrih are former players that have been on the staff with player development. So I think it's a great thing, and I see no issues with that, whatsoever here with all of that. Craig says we have a very good team at every position with depth. If healthy, this is our year. I don't know if the depth is fully there, but they definitely have a good team that's going to be competitive for a top 4 spot. I just said that on TV earlier today that you might see a clip of later tonight, but it'll be there on Sunday. Jason Sims says 5 days a week. Be here. Of course, everyone needs to start becoming an everydayer. Look, if you listen to 1 day a week, try listening to 2. Whatever you're doing now, try and listen to one more show a week. It's like 20, 25 minutes. It's not that long. It's for your morning commute, whatever it might be. That'll make a real big difference in keeping the show free and 5 days a week for y'all with it. Jessica Anderson says all in on Zion too, but yeah, it's definitely like a thing with him. Left Face King says, why would Jrue come back to New Orleans? We're not even contenders. Because he's under contract and they trade for him. I don't know. We heard Damian Lillard didn't want to play for any other team than the Miami Heat. Now he's on the Milwaukee Bucks and he's going to play for him. Sometimes it's kind of as simple as that. They don't always have like the biggest hand in those sorts of things. So if he's traded here, he would play. I think it's kind of as simple as that. With it all, LaFace King says, respectfully. It was respectful. You were good, man. Don't worry. Jessica Anderson says it doesn't matter who you trade or add. The key is Zion's health. It's all on Zion. I agree with you. Craig says, I would like Trey to be in the starting 5, although I love Herb and would like him to be a great depth piece with a 6-man who's instant offense. Would be nice if Hawkins developed quickly and fills that role. Hawkins is fairly one-dimensional. I think he's a good fit on this team. You could argue he's the best fit in the draft. You could argue he's the best movement shooter in the draft. What else does he do other than shoot, though? And I'm not sure there's a ton of that, which I do think limits his ceiling and a little bit of his role in the NBA. Thomas Atkinson says, what up, Jake? I'm Locked On Pelicans, your team every day. Love it. Kevin Byers, what is success for the Pelicans this year? Stay healthy, they'll be successful, but it's avoid the play-in tournament, 6 seed or better. It's like if they're in the play-in tournament, some things have gone wrong and they need to do a long evaluation. That's something that I do think is important. Hakeem Batiste says, do you think Dyson can be a full-time point guard at 6'8"? He can kind of be like a healthier Lonzo Ball. 11 points per game, 7 rebounds, 7 assists per. Good perimeter defense. Yeah, he's a bigger Lonzo Ball, right? Like that's what I long thought is his ceiling. He might not be as good of a passer as Lonzo, Alonzo ended up turning into a good 3-point shooter, but like that's kind of like the player that you are looking for when it comes to it. Josh Darby says Rondo can show BI how to dish those dimes some more. That's not that's not how BI plays and gives his assists, right? His assists come off of him being such a good scorer and attacking the basket, and that's what you really want to see when it comes to all those players. So like the fancy passing is great that Rondo does and everything, but that's not BI's game. That was definitely Rondo's game. Silverwolf says, do you think more teams will take the regular season seriously this season? Felt like a lot of teams got caught at the end of the season and it hurt. Yeah, like I definitely think teams are going to take it all more seriously. The new player resting rules are going to be a factor with all of this. I think players are going to take it more seriously with that 65 games being the minimum threshold to make an All-NBA team and all of the end of season awards too. That's something that I do think will help all of this. Sherwin says, how many small forwards are there on the roster? It's a little bit of like positionless basketball, but you have Brandon Ingram, Najee Marshall, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones is kind of in there too. So like 3-4 guys that kind of fill that wing spot, I think is what you're looking at with all of that. Issei says, I think this team is better top to bottom over last year's team. I mean, it's largely the same. Like it's largely the same. All of the main guys, the ones that are actually going to play significant minutes and matter to your win-loss record are the same. It's all of the other stuff they're doing that is going to make or break along with like health. And I think that's what we, see with it. When is Trey going to make his return? I don't want to put a date on it. I have a show on that. Go watch that one where you can kind of see when maybe he would be returning here. Sherwin says Damian Lillard expanded trade list to Bucks Nets while resisting Raptors. Like, yeah, sure. I've seen that, but he added the Bucks later on when he realized he wasn't going to get his way. Jrue Holiday would still play here if he was traded. I really do think it's kind of as simple as that. Also, he has to. Like, I don't know. You're under contract. This is the team you're on now. Like, that's how it's going to go. So, like, don't be scared to make moves. Go all in if they feel the right option is there, even if this person doesn't want to be here. If they're under contract, they're not going to walk in a year, you're good. I don't think Jrue Holiday would have walked in a year with a near $40 million salary his final year when, there were some open questions about his retirement and like his ability to do well in the postseason here. So yeah, that's important with all of that. Contracts matter. That's why I thought more teams should have traded for Damian Lillard. He would have kept expanding. He would have expanded his list to the team that he was traded to because that's how that's going to go because he doesn't have a choice. And he's like a pretty consummate professional, so I was never really scared of that. All right, we're going to wrap it up here. That's going to do it for this week of Locked On Pelicans Media Day Monday. I have the mobile set up. It's going to be a lot of fun. Join the Locked On Pelicans Insiders group on Subtext so that you can get updates from me live on Media Day. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait. It's going to be a fun season. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Pelicans part of your day. And if you're an everydayer, thank you. That matters so much. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at Nola Jake on Twitter. Thank you all again. I'm excited for Monday. We'll have a Media Day primer. After that, it's probably going to be stuff from Media Day and training camp the rest of the week, different interviews and things. I don't exactly know how Monday is going to go, but I am so pumped for it. So I'm going to do my best to bring you the best coverage we can. So stay tuned for a lot coming next week. I appreciate y'all being here. Yeah, we'll talk to you on Monday. Go Pels.